This video is part of the Farmhouse Decor DIYs Open Challenge. I'll tell you a little bit more about it after the first project. Project number 1, Farmhouse Vibes. So I want to introduce you to my 10-inch miter saw I gifted myself. I do have a handheld one, but it's painful and time-consuming to use, so this is going to be a game changer for me. I'm going to show you how I make a bunch of house shapes, just like the Dollar Tree house shapes, but I don't think my wood is as good. This is just some scrap wood that I purchased at Habitat for Humanity Restore. I'm just making a few quick measurements, making some house shapes, and I'm just turning the saw to the 45-degree angle on the right and the left to get the roof shape on the house. I'm also saving the triangle shapes that are scrap from making the house shapes, and those are going to come in handy a little bit later, and I'll show you that. For now, I'm going to gather up my shapes, and I'm going to head back to my craft desk. So these are the 3 shapes I chose to do, and I made a few mistakes here, and I'll bring you through them. I painted them without sealing the wood first, so I ended up with the tannins leaching through. For now, though, I wanted to show you these Funsel acrylic markers. Funsel reached out to me because I introduced you to their colored markers, and you were able to choose them in different shapes. Now they have like black, white, gold, silver, where you get every size but in the one color. So they gave me some black markers, and they range in size from the jumbo tip at 15 millimeters to the extra fine at 1 millimeter. They would be great for doing like a gingham or buffalo chip pattern on stones or rock or even wood. They're working really great on this MDF here. I also used the 3 millimeter, 1 millimeter tip to do some stitching. So here I am back to the house shapes, and I realized the tannins are leaching into the white. So I actually ended up giving them 2 coats of Mod Podge, dry in between, and then I sprayed them with like a matte finishing spray before I came back to them. Oh, and I also give them another coat of white on top of the finishing spray. And now I'm going to do the letters. These are just some adhesive stencil letters that I purchased at Walmart. And if I had to do it again, I would get the letters F and A closer together. But I just, line them up the way the squares were for the stencils. So they're a little bit far apart, but they're okay. Now I have an essential stencil here that says Summer Vibes, but I'm just going to use the word Vibes. And I'm going to put it on as low as I can. And the portion of the letter B is going to come up to the word house, but I kind of like it. So next mistake or error, if you will, I forget to do this a lot. Fuzz your stencils. Any adhesive stencil, please fuzz them, because I often forget, and I'm usually okay, but such was not the case here. I'm just cutting them to size, on the guidelines, and then putting them straight on. And even with all that Mod Podge and everything, I still ended up tearing up some of the paint. So I went in, I took one of my regular size squeegees and I cut it in half, because I needed something smaller, and I only have one mini squeegee. So this is like right away. As soon as I squeegeed all 4, I come back, and it's not coming up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to leave like pieces of plastic on here. And I just kept working and working on it, easing it up finally, but it was tearing up little specks of paint. I was actually leaving a tint of that teal color on the stencil. So you see, especially on that second one, a lot of paint came up. And I had one more part to do. It was the candle. It was a different color, and I fuzzed that first and had no trouble pulling up the stencil. So it took me a good while to correct the mistakes. So it's basically filling in where the paint pulled up, filling in where you see some of that teal color, and then coming back with the pencil marker and filling in the letters and giving them some cleaner lines. I did the weather vane there. I also did the little vines on top, even the word at the bottom. Just, and it was nice to be able to choose a 3mm or 1mm size marker, you know, without having to make do with whatever size you have. So here's the little triangle scrap pieces of wood, painting them black. They're going to be used to prop up the houses in the back. So to do that, first I have to glue all the houses together, and I used wood glue and a little bit of hot glue, and then used my laundry clips to hold them together, and it didn't take long. Then I made a bow using the awareness shape, cinching it in the middle and wrapping it with some twine, and I'm going to hot glue that on the top of the middle house. And I end up having to give a really good trim to those tails because I did not want to cover up the word farm. We worked really hard to get those words on there, so we don't want to cover them up. And I'm gluing those triangles on the back of the middle house and the side of the side house. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with both triangles, and I'll give you a better look of this whole project during the final reveal. Okay, jumping in with a little bit more information about the playlist. It happens every month on the 1st. The theme this month is Farmhouse Decor DIYs. Our host is Amanda from 6 Kids and a Glue Gun. And then we have 2 co-hosts. We have Shantell from Crafty Hints and Brenda from Rustic and Lace DIY. Their channel links, as well as a link to the playlist, will be in my description box below. Project number 2, cow, pig, chicken, vintage poster. Okay, this one's a little bit easier than the previous one. There's much fewer steps. So we start with that 8x10 size vintage style poster that I purchased at Temu. And then I have this Dollar Tree vintage look frame. I was actually going to do a reverse canvas and staple it. When I saw this frame, I just had to use it. I mean, it's so realistic. I was even running my finger over it because I thought there were cracks, but it was just, you know, they just made it look like that. So I'm just taking a little bit of burnt umber acrylic paint and using a damp microfiber cloth to rub it over the frame just to give it a vintage color because it was a little bit too bright for my liking. The nice thing about this is there's usually a little bit of give between the poster and the frame. This was originally a 5x7 frame, but when you take all the backings and mats off, you're left with an 8x10 size frame. So I put down some E6000 glue. That's the way I decided to do it. And I made a mark in the corner there. And so I'm just going to make sure I get that one corner in right and then smooth down everything else from there. And then I realized that since I didn't trim the canvas or whatever fabric it's on, that I can't put back that black backboard. So I took some of these jumbo craft sticks and I trimmed them down and I glued them again using E6000 glue and some hot glue for the immediate hold. And I just glued down these popsicle sticks to give it a better, more permanent adhesion. Now, I often forget to do this, but I grabbed this shipping paper and trimmed some up. And then I put some of that good old Elmer's wood glue and painted it onto the wood pieces there. And then I'm going to match up one corner, smooth down the rest. Then using a very sharp X-Acto knife, I'll just trim away the excess paper. And then we have a pretty back. And of course, I just can't help myself. I have to border my framed photos with a piece of decorative rope. And it has so many different kinds of ropes. So I grabbed this. I liked how it looked. I liked the color of it. I liked the width of it. So I just squirted some of that hot glue kind of in underneath the frame. And then when I put down the rope, I also pushed it a little bit in underneath the frame. Got that last little corner done. And then I just took that marker fiber cloth, and there was burnt umber left on it, so I just kind of rubbed it in random places. Because when things age, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason as to where it ages or how dark it ages, so I just kind of rubbed the cloth randomly. I made a shoelace bow with some lace, and I liked how it looked, so I trimmed it and hot glued it on the corner there. I was going to use the lace as a hanging rope, but I changed my mind. I decided to use the rope that I used to border it. So I'll get that bow down, and then I'm going to flip it over and glue down that decorative rope. And I just used some hot glue to do that. And then I pulled some hot glue all the way across the top there, and I put in a pretty ribbon. And that's it. Much easier than the last one, and I'll give you a better look at the final reveal. Project number 3. It's a farmhouse themed cutting board sign. The cutting board I purchased from Temu. I'm coloring it with some of that acrylic burnt umber paint that I used in the previous projects. This time I'm painting it on and then right away wiping it off with that damp microfiber cloth. Normally I'd use like a baby wipe, but I cannot find my baby wipes. And this seems to be working just fine. So I actually did both sides just because there was lots of burnt umber on the cloth. So I went ahead and did both sides because you never know. And wouldn't you know it, I needed the both sides done. And I will show you why. So I finished up, tried to do that one side and fixed a mistake that tried to fix a mistake and ended up with this. So flipped it over and applied some white wax. I try and either apply white wax or spray a finishing spray, like a matte finishing spray. But a lot of times with the Chalk Couture, I'll do a white wax just because that's what I have. I don't have any surface wax yet. So got that on there and started very carefully placing the stencil because that was my problem with the previous one. It wasn't placed right when I tried to fix it. I just kept messing it up. So I'm doing the top one first using one of my squeegees and black chalk paste. And also this, not only had this been used previous, like just a few minutes before, but it was also fuzzed numerous times. So I like the way the top turned out. So I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to fold down the top that I just used and then place the bottom part where I want, right at the very, very bottom of the sign. It's just the sign is a little bit too big, but I wanted it for this cutting board shape, so I'm just sort of finagling it here, or MacGyvering it, I guess you call it. All right, so I'm not going to use the words, so I'm not worrying about the fact that the words are going off the edges. I only want the image. And so I just kind of, it almost looks a little crooked on the actual stencil. So I, don't be afraid to like position it and, twist it this way or that way. So I did kind of pull it one way to make it looked like it was tilted forward. It was really strange. And it has like a ground level to it, like some grass and stuff. So I wanted that to look straight, and it does. And I'm so glad that I just unstraightened it to make it look straight. And I have those leftover triangle scrap pieces of wood, and I just painted them. I think that's a cashew. I just have it, never used it, so I wanted to see what it looked like. I'm making my bow with the awareness shape and cinching it in the middle. Excuse me. And then I'm going to hot glue it at the bottom of the handle, or where the handle and the board meet. Just a little bit of hot glue to go and trim the tails. Like so. And this was a pretty easy project. I mean, if you know how to rub paint on a cutting board and do a stencil, you're pretty much good to go. So I did the vinyl off camera because I was mad. I was in a bad mood. But I'm going to put the triangles on now, and just using the design of the buffalo check as a guide. So I painted on the wood glue, and then I did a little dab of hot glue on the top and bottom and pressed the little triangles on both sides. And it's pretty much an immediate bond, and that's what's nice about putting the hot glue on there. Now it's nice and sturdy, and I'll give you a better look at the final reveal. Thanks for hanging out with me to the end of this video. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, you can do so by clicking on my picture in the bottom right there. And if you missed my last video, you can also click on it on the bottom left. Thanks for watching. I love you. I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.